Make your next move with American Express Business Platinum. Earn 5 times membership rewards points on flights and prepaid hotels booked on AmexTravel.com. And with a welcome offer of 150,000 points after you spend $20,000 on purchases on the card within your first 3 months of membership, your business can soar to new heights. Terms apply. Learn more at americanexpress.com/business-platinum. Amex Business Platinum. Built for business by American Express.
Hello, and welcome to It's a Fandom Thing. I'm your host, Erin Marlowe, and each week I'm joined by a panel of guests to discuss all things fandom and pop culture, primarily from a female perspective. You'll find everything from fanfic, to cosplay, to Schitt's Creek, to Supernatural, and everything in between. So put on your favorite piece of fandom merch, set aside that fanfic that you're writing about your OTP, and sit back and enjoy this week's episode. Hello, and welcome to It's a Fandom Thing. I'm your host, Erin Marlowe, and we are continuing Comedy Month with a look at the show The Office. We covered this show back in 2020, just to let you know, and Tanya and I just discovered that, Tanya, they were on that one.
And I forgot.
I forgot.
I would have re-listened, so I may say the same things, and no one cares.
Yeah, it's fine. I mean, I'm afraid to go listen to that just because it was still in our early stages of podcasting, you know? But if you want to, go back and listen to that. We also talked about Parks and Rec, and we talked about The Good Place. But today we were talking about The Office, which is turning 20 years old. And so that's why I wanted to revisit it, because I just thought it'd be kind of a cool way to kind of celebrate that, see if maybe any opinions have changed. Like I said, I don't even remember what I said on that episode, but we'll see. And plus, last week we talked about The 40-Year-Old Virgin, which was also turning 20 years old. So I just thought it'd be also a fun way to celebrate 2 Steve Carell projects that arguably those 2 things are what made Steve Carell a star. We are going to be spoiling The Office.
Yeah, spoilers for a 20-year-old show.
I know. You can watch this, of course, on Peacock. I'm sure you can rent it from your library. And then, let me introduce Tanya. I'm sorry, Tanya. We've been talking, but I didn't formally introduce you.
Yes.
So joining me today is Tanya. Hello, Tanya.
Hello. Hi, I'm Tanya. I have pink hair, and it's fading from being washed. I don't know if you're going to see this, but that's okay.
They're not, but...
And I'm wearing office-themed pants, which I'm showing Erin, that have different little things on them. They say Dunder Mifflin, they say World's Best Boss, coffee mug, and they say, of course, that's what she said.
They have to say that.
They have to say that.
I mean, we say that on this podcast all the time.
I do, as much as I possibly can. Yeah.
Yeah, and we've said it tons of times on here. Yeah. It's one of those, that sticks with you. But The Office, and of course, if you don't know, this is a remake from a British show. British, like, it was like snobby. I didn't mean to say it that way, but
British.
From the UK. Yeah. Yeah.
British, isn't it?
But they, of course, toned the character of Michael, who was originally played by Ricky Gervais in that version. And they toned they changed the character a little bit because they kind of knew they kind of had to in order for the show to get a wider audience and everything. But this is a mockumentary about a group of typical office workers where the workday consists of ego clashes, inappropriate behavior, tedium, and romance. When you look on IMDb, by the way, so Steve Carell to me is like the big star. I know he left in season 7, but he's still the biggest star in this, I think. And he is listed like way down in the credits on IMDb. Must be the way they did him, but
that's wild. Yeah.
I know. So it stars, of course, Steve Carell, Rainn Wilson, John Krasinski, Jenna Fisher, Leslie David Baker, Brian Baumgartner, Angela Kinsey, Kate Flannery, Phyllis Smith, Creed Bratton as Creed Bratton. I just like to say that. I love it when the people are playing like their same name, you know? Like Phyllis Smith plays Phyllis.
Mhm.
Oscar Nunez plays Oscar Martinez. BJ Novak, Mindy Kaling, Ed Harris, Paul Lieberstein, Craig Robinson, Ellie Kemper, and tons and tons and tons of people. I'm going to stop because it's just a long list. But this show not only made Steve Carell a star, it also made Rainn Wilson a star. It made John Krasinski a star. I don't think it really made Jenna Fisher a star, to be honest. I think it made her famous, but her career trajectory is a lot different than, say, Steve Carell or John Krasinski, which is interesting. And of course, she co-hosts a podcast with Angela Kinsey because they're best friends in real life. And what's the name of the podcast? I can't remember what the name of the podcast
is. It The Office Ladies? Something
Yes,
like
thank
that.
you. It's The Office Ladies. That's
I've
what
not
it is.
listened to it because I only listen to this podcast exclusively. And everything else is dead to me.
Thank you, Tanya. That's
You're
how
welcome.
it should be. Except for the podcasts of the other people that we have on.
Yeah, I do listen to all of those. That I was accepting all of those. Bed Red Behead. Something about streaming twins and brains. No.
Yeah, Twin It to Win It.
That's it.
my...
See, that one. I listen to that all, like
Oh
so
my
much.
gosh. Okay, well, Tanya, what I first want to know is, how did you first discover the show? And has it aged well for you?
Wow, those are fun. I love those questions. So I think I saw the British version a million years ago. Like I think I actually saw that first, and I thought it was really funny or interesting. I guess it was what your listeners need to know if they are not familiar with that. It was very much punching down. I think I'm not, as you can tell, I mean, I sound really smartish, but I'm not like a professional media commentator, despite playing one on this podcast. But yeah, they're it's very mean, like, and it's not, that's okay, I think, for what it was. But we watched a year or two of that somehow. And then I saw that the US was remaking it, and I thought, I don't know. And this was the time when shows like American Idol were being brought from the UK. And I think other shows like that were kind of becoming more, they're going to do a reboot of it in the US. And I didn't really realize that happened because this is just before social media. So it's prior to kind of, being able to know that without being told that, I suppose, as easily. So I had seen it. And then the first season I didn't love, because I think what is good about this show and what ends up getting you is that if you've worked in an office, you've met all these people. Like the reason this plays well is all of the stereotypes of office workers, or I don't even know if they're stereotypes, but all of the tropes are there. You have definitely worked with someone inhabiting, this particular instance of their capacity. And I would say that's still true for me. And so by the second season, later in the first season and by the second season, I thought it was really funny and really enjoyed it. So this was back when our kids were really little, and my oldest kid calls the opening of The Office the soundtrack of his youth. Like the da-da-da-da, because for him, that music is extremely nostalgic. I think in the same way that even though I've never watched MASH, I don't think I've ever, maybe one, which is wild for somebody my age. If I hear the song, I immediately know, I can visualize the opening of MASH. And I think the same thing is true for this show for people who are probably Gen Z. This was kind of their childhood music that they remember. So this was the show that we would watch after the kids went to bed, is what I'm saying. And so I loved it. Yeah. Does it hold up? It's still very, very funny. I was rewatching it a little bit this week in preparation. It's still funny. There are very interesting things that are dated about it. And I'm going to hold on to that for a second. Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting. It's so funny when you said the MASH thing, because that's so true. I think I've maybe seen a couple episodes, and it was my dad was watching it or something. But it's true. I know that opening song, the theme, I know, I can picture it. I can picture how it looks, all of that. That's very true. That's so funny. And so it's interesting to me that this show has become that for another generation, which makes sense. It makes total sense. And it's probably the same with like Parks and Rec and some of the other shows, because The Office really kicked off that thing that was happening with the mockumentary stuff. And I mean, here in the United States. And it kicked that off. And, of course, you got Parks and Rec, you got Modern Family, you got all sorts of shows that did it. But The Office kind of was the originator of doing this kind of style of a show. I worked in an office that was basically like this office, except it was primarily female. There was like in the office of working in the office, it was like a branch of a huge corporation that actually was a really great corporation to work for, honestly. But I had a boss because I do remember this part of our first episode we ever did, because people were like, there's no boss that's really like Michael. I had a boss exactly like Michael, the female version of Michael Scott. And I mean, exactly like that. Like, she really, really wanted people to like her. That's really the deep down, who, at his core, who Michael is. And we're going to single him out in a minute here. And so for me, I was like, this was after that branch had closed. And I'm like, I can only imagine if this show had been on, it was like premiered like basically a year after that branch had closed. And if that branch had still been open, I would have definitely still been working there. And it would have been so interesting to watch this show at that time and talk about it with my coworkers and go, now, don't you think that Michael Scott is just like, I'm not going to name her, just like so-and-so? And I think we all would have been like, yeah. I mean, like, things she did was exactly like that. And so for anyone who's ever worked in an office, and I'm very fortunate now, knock on wood, it stays this way, that I work primarily from home. And I'm very glad not to be in that office environment, because I think that's what this show so accurately portrays, is how toxic that environment can be and how soul-sucking that environment can be. But also how on the other side of that coin, the flip side, is you get so used to it that if you're there for a long time, that it does become like a family. For some people it does. And then you also have the people that just don't fit into the family, and you have the cooler part of the office and the not cool part of the office and the cliques. And it's like being in high school.
Yeah.
In a lot of respects, it's like being in high school. And you sit there and you don't. This is why when people say people are more productive in the office, I say bullshit, because when you're in an office, people are constantly interrupting you. People are constantly wanting to gossip. They're their water cooler talk. That's a saying for a reason. And so you will have that. You'll have people will have like tiffs. You'll have like in that office, we didn't have any romances or anything like that. Most people were either married or in relationships. And I don't know if there were any affairs. I didn't hear about them. But we did have, we had the alcoholic, we had the person who had a farm, you had you had the different kind of characters. And I think this show so accurately captures that and captures what corporate America is like and working in a corporation, especially when when you're just a branch of a bigger corporation. I think it captures that very well. And the changing industries. I mean, there are lots and lots of fan theories about this show that I encourage people to go and try and check out, because the biggest thing is that people are like, how did this branch ever stay open? Because it is the most incompetently run branch, and it's in a smaller town. It's in Scranton, and it's in a smaller town and not as huge of a place as, say, the other branches they had. Why would this branch stay open? So there are all these theories of like money laundering, and like Kevin is secretly a genius and was doing all these money laundering schemes.
Because
and all of that.
That's funny. I mean, sure. If you need to go there, that's I don't that does. It's not a plausible situation. That's why it's a comedy, right? Is that
exactly. I mean, you kind of have to let go.
Yeah, I think for me, it really looked really real. Having worked in an office in the 90s and probably throughout the 90s at various points. Like, I like that it looked like an office.
Yes, it did.
People looked every day. To me, they're still like attractive humans, and you can see the celebritification of Steve Carell specifically, or even somebody like Pam, right? She's not. It's not like she's ever ugly. Like, she's very, or even what's his name, Krasinski, right? But at some point, like, he wears his hair different, or she has a little different hairstyle that's more flattering, and they even put that into the show. But they're still, if you look at these people on a red carpet or in something else, they're glammed up a lot. So I actually think that was very well done of them to like unglam these folks into a more boring, ordinary kind of looking context, because I think that's part of what set the scene for that. But yeah, that really worked for me. What feels dated about it is the tech. Like, you don't see that anymore.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And I mean, I know
Most
that's very
of the tech.
obvious, but it's more like, I was watching it the other day and I thought, what's fascinating about this to me is everyone gets bored, but people don't get bored now because they'd be on their phone.
That's
right?
true.
So they'd be on the internet, or they'd be doing something else on the computer, and they just don't have that opportunity in this context, because they don't have things like texting, they don't have social media, they don't have group texts or something like that. It's just maybe they're IMing each other or whatever, inter-office email or something like that, and then they have to invent things to do, like paperclip tossing, or I'm thinking of the paper football thing.
Yeah.
I'm making the gesture.
Yeah, but I can't remember what it's called. But yeah.
Dunder ball. No, that's where they bounce the ball back and forth. The Office Olympics. But all those things you do all day where you're just kind of, I have to be here. Especially, I've been Pam. I've been the receptionist.
Oh, me too. I've been Pam more than I used to. I mean, I used to always joke I was Pam without her Jim. I used to joke that all the time when this show was on, because I was a receptionist and an administrative assistant for a big majority of the time this show was on. And none of those offices were really completely like this office, though. One of them was like a marble company, so it was a little bit different. And another one was like just a small 3-person company. And I was like the third person. So, but I felt that like, being a receptionist is such a hard job, because you're not treated very well, quite frankly. You're paid pretty poorly. You are the center and the face of the company. And so you get shit on, frankly, by customers. You get shit on by people calling in. You have to deal with the moods of all of your fellow coworkers. And if something falls apart, it can fall on you, even if it's not your fault. So it's a very mind-numbing job too, because a lot of times you don't have anything to do.
You're just answering the phone. And I don't know,
sitting there.
Does that exist still? I think it does, but I was thinking about how now when you call, you press a number, right, to get to this. And so they don't have that. They need someone. I mean, they do have voicemail, but like a Pam to connect someone to different, hot extensions or something. I just don't know that exists in the same way that it did at this time period. So that's a little bit interesting. But the other part, not to interrupt you, but yes, I've definitely done that. It is, people think you're stupid, or they treat you poorly, or they hypersexualize you, and so they sexually harass you. Like the episode where they have a sexual harassment training. And Pam has a line about, and that's the day everyone sexually harasses me as a joke. I was like, oh, that was every day. That sucked. I remember this. Like, it was just frustrating. Like, not constant necessarily, and not necessarily more than when I was a waitress, but just really overt. And I don't know I hope that doesn't still happen to people, but as a young person in the 90s and various jobs, it was just like part of the job, unfortunately.
Yeah. No, I remember, and it's funny because when it happened at the time, I didn't even think of it in that context, which is so weird. But like, I remember I had this one coworker, and he would come up to me and start massaging me, start massaging my shoulders. And it was so uncomfortable. It made me feel awful. And he wouldn't ask. He would just start doing it. And he'd be like, "Oh, you look a little stressed," and start massaging me.
Ugh.
And I look back at it now and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's horrible. That's absolutely horrible. But yeah, people would talk down to you all the time. I remember routinely, like, people would introduce people and they'd be like, "This is so and so, this is so and so, and this is our reception area." You're not even a person, you're a
Yeah.
reception area.
You're just in the vicinity. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's true.
Mhm.
So yeah, I do think as far as holding up, I mean, yes, the technology, and I mean, I know when they were filming this, people actually would have computers there, and a lot of times they'd be playing solitaire. That was a big thing. You'd play solitaire. But there would be times where you wouldn't really have anything to do. And so I do think in this day and age, you would have, of course, your phone, that kind of stuff, and be on the internet more. Although they were still on the internet in this, but not to the same degree. And of course, the sexual harassment part, which I hope it doesn't happen on the same blatant level. Or I hope it doesn't happen at all, of course, but I hope it doesn't happen in that same level as it does on this show. Of course, the, blatant racism, the blatant
Yeah.
homophobia, the blatant sexism, I mean, there's lots of stuff like that in this show. They still were using some language that's not okay.
Mhm.
It's still very much a product of its time period.
Mhm.
And, what shocked me the most about this rewatch is, because I've watched this show countless times. I've seen this show, like, it's I had a rotation of comedies that I watch before I go to bed. Right now, I'm just watching Family Ties, but, and they're kind of like my wind down,
Mhm.
shut down my brain. And my main rotation used to just be The Office and Parks and Rec and Friends sometimes, and sometimes and in Schitt's Creek and maybe The Good Place. And that would be like my rotation. And so I've watched this show an embarrassing number of times, except for the 8th and 9th season. And I have to say, what struck me the most this time was how insufferable some of these people are that I used to really love, like Jim. Jim is insufferable. Jim is actually not a very good person.
No, he's
And it's
frustrating.
funny that I
Yeah.
used to always be like, I want a Jim. And now I watch it and I'm like, because I shipped Jim and Pam big time. When they finally got together, I remember watching that the first time. And her face right after he asks her if she wants to go get dinner, and her little, like, what was the question? And the smile, the genuine look of, like, oh. And watching it this time, I'm like, I don't really, they're kind of snobby and they kind of feel like they're above everybody else. And, there's a whole video about how people hate Pam, like people hate this character. And I never felt that way. And then rewatching it this time, this is the first time where I was like, they're kind of insufferable. I still was happy when they got together, but at the same time, I'm like, you know what? Maybe Karen was right. Maybe Pam is kind of a bitch.
It's interesting because there's nothing wrong with her, but no one in that show is someone you should root for, really. And that's the point, I think, honestly. Like, you don't, nobody is like unquestionably positive, right? Or
Yeah.
unquestionably, this is someone to emulate, right? Or be like, no, everyone's a problem. Everyone's a little bit shitty in some way or difficult. And that's reality, right? You have coworkers who are easier to get along with than others, but you don't have coworkers who, you might. No one is also this bad, because that you would have
That's true.
lawsuits or they'd be fired. Like some of that. And that's funny what you say about the language. Like, I'm not comfortable with the jokes, obviously, or the racist or homophobic overtones, but I felt even at that time watching it, it was like edgy. Like that was not acceptable to say and do those things at that time. And that's part of why it played the way it did, because you're watching it and it's very cringe, as the kids say, or so I'm told. Like, even at the time, you're like, ooh, secondhand embarrassment is really, really high. And I actually had a hard time watching it for that reason at first. But that was supposed to, I think, initially that was part of the British show, And they dialed that way up. And then for the American audience, I think they changed it and they made it more sympathetic. Like, okay, this person is like your weird friend who does do this, but then they also have these good qualities, or, there's both of these things. So, yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, no, and I agree. I just think it's the stuff that's said that's not part of the joke. It's like the
Yeah.
normal talk that you couldn't use. Like, I believe everything's kind of blending into my mind right now, but I believe they even use like the R word, which is making a comeback right now on every side of the aisle, and that needs to stop. It's so disgusting and despicable to me. I do not understand why people have decided collectively that it's okay to use that word again, because it's not.
No.
And it's every side of the aisle. It's not just one side using it. I've seen everybody use it, and it's really bothering me. But like that. But yeah, no, I agree. I think that was part of the shock value almost, or the appeal. And I think for the first season of The Office, and that's what they definitely toned down in the second, and they had to, or nobody would have rooted for Michael ever, because Michael is very much, and I'll save a lot of this for our next segment, but Michael is very much like the worst of the worst presented in the first season, at least. But as this show goes on, for me, the two worst characters, putting aside, because Robert California is hands down the worst character ever on the show. I love you so much, James Spader, but I hate that character. I think that was the worst character ever on this show. One of the worst characters, period. But I think hands down, of the characters that were on here for a long time, the worst people on this show are Ryan. Ryan, number one. Ryan is awful. I know some of that is colored by the fact that I'm not the biggest fan of the actor. And then Andy. I think Andy is awful. I hate Andy so much. And I think it's funny with Andy, because Andy comes on, and I think, like, I remember somebody, I don't remember who it was live tweeting like their first watch of this show. So this was way back when Twitter was actually a decent place to be on. And they were saying, oh, I really like this Andy character. And I'm like biting my tongue. And then like a little bit later it changed. And they're like, oh my gosh, he's scum. And so they are the absolute worst. So it's like, even though my enjoyment of Jim and Pam went down on this rewatch, I still, for the most part, enjoy all of these characters, even when they are horrible and do horrible, awful things, So I still find them enjoyable. I still laughed. I still love this show.
Mm-hmm.
I stop it after Michael leaves, but I still love this show. So we are going to take a quick break, and we are going to get into just talking about Michael Scott, because I think it's just important to kind of single him out, even though this is an ensemble show. I just think he kind of, like, the way that character is handled is just so interesting to me. But we'll be right back.
Have you ever met a single person in your life that enjoys paying taxes? No, no one does. If you can't sleep at night because you have a huge problem with the IRS, I've got some free advice for you. This service is strictly limited to individuals that owe the IRS $10,000 or more in back taxes. And if you qualify, we can guarantee that you won't be writing a big fat check to the IRS, or our services cost you nothing. The first 100 people that call today will get a free tax consultation worth $500. Stop worrying about your IRS problem. We can help you, we promise. Call the tax doctor right now. I mean right now, to learn more.
800-281-7048. 800-281-7048. 800-281-7048. That's 800-281-7048.
Okay, so Tanya, Michael Scott, who is played, of course, by Steve Carell, is the boss and the manager of the Scranton branch up until towards the end of season 7, when he moves to Boulder, Colorado.
It's Boulder. I forgot where it was. Yeah.
With Holly, who I have to say, Holly and Michael are my number one office ship. I love those two together. They were the perfect couple, frankly, perfect for each other. And I was so happy when they got together. I love the proposal. But what are your thoughts on Michael and how the office functions around him? And do you think it makes sense that people end up loving his character?
I think so. Yeah, totally. He shifts a lot and he becomes much more sympathetic, empathetic, right, throughout the course of the show. Like, you initially see this obnoxious person that you would not want to be in charge of you. And that's your first perspective. And then I think, like getting to know someone, you start to understand more of where he is competent. And when they start showing him being competent at sales, I'm about on my rewatch to The Client, where he goes to Chili's and he's, and I think is it Jan? And it's just like, what is the point of all this? And then he's like, oh yeah, I sold that. We figured this out a long time ago. This was all the dance, right? I'm going through the motions of all of this because this is what I understand this person wants. So his superpower is making people like him and want to listen to him and knowing what they want and then giving them that, or that's what he thinks he's doing. So then you realize even his really awful off-color humor and selfishness harder to understand, but like the off-color humor is not because he thinks it's funny necessarily. It's because he thinks other people think that's funny. And that's how he understands, oh, people want this, they want to feel good, they want to laugh, so I'm going to give them that. But I think it's when you start to see him be competent, that's when you start to really feel more empathy for him and understand his overall arc. It doesn't mean you're like okay with his behavior or you condone it, because it's still terrible. But I remember that being like, interesting. Okay, for me, that's what I need to see. I need to see something redeemable about the character. And then he does, I think, get better as the show progresses, like in terms of he's more competent, or you see him fall in love with Holly, and that's really his good characteristics are brought out by that versus Jan. Sorry, I'm laughing because one of my favorite episodes is Dinner Party.
Oh, me too.
We watched that way too many times. That's such a great episode of TV, period.
It is.
It's just, I don't know. And I know I haven't even watched a lot of like backstage stuff for this show, but one thing I did see was Steve Carell had to, as Michael, do or say something really offensive, really sexist to the women. And then after he was like, I'm so sorry. He apologized because I think that's what people don't realize, that this is acting, right? This is not, I hope to God, how people are. But you can even, on my rewatch, I'm looking at the characters in the background and seeing them laughing. And they're definitely breaking character. But it must have been so challenging. So no, I totally understand Michael. I don't hopefully behave like that, and I don't understand, or I don't condone a lot of the behavior, but my family and I think people that I teach and work with would agree that I am a little bit Michael Scott. Like that is a very important part of my personality, like, because I want to tell jokes and I want to be entertaining. I don't necessarily want everything to be about me and my foot that I cooked on my George Foreman grill. That's my favorite episode. The injury.
I love that episode too.
I just watched that before we had this recording, and I was like, okay. I was laughing so hard. Every night when I go to bed, I lay 6 strips of bacon out on my George Foreman grill, and when I wake up, I plug it in, and I burned my foot. I cooked my foot. So sue me. I like waking up to the smell of bacon. We had a George Foreman grill. I think that's the other touch point that people don't know, is like the George Foreman grill was the dumbest thing that everybody had at that time. Like, it was just a ubiquitous, like, as seen on TV kind of thing that you had. Like, it's what people got you for Christmas, or I don't even know, like a Keurig was a few years later or whatever. Yeah. So that for me, I think really, really, one more thing about Michael, he illustrates, like, if you want to get some sociology in here a little bit, he illustrates this idea of the Peter principle, it's called, where you're promoted to your level of incompetence. And I think you can really see that in his character. Like, that is apparently a trend in bureaucracies and organizations. And I think he exemplifies that. Like, he ended up just kind of being there and being the person that was promoted. And then he kind of grew into that role, or didn't, or grew funkily into that role, like in a weird way, and kind of got good at some parts, and then other parts he's not good at. And I think we've all worked with that person in various capacities, but that is that principle as shown to comedic effect, right? That you're promoted to your
Yeah.
level of incompetence.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, the boss that I had that was just like Michael, like did like she would play Baby Got Back like over the intercom, and you'd be on the phone with clients and I'd be like, can you hang on a second? I'd be like, you have to turn that down because I'm talking with a client. And then she wanted us to
Wow.
get an office animal, and everyone's like, we can't adopt a dog or a cat. We're gonna take turns taking it home. So we got an office bird, okay? An office bird, and everybody would take turns taking this bird home at night. And the bird would go around and be on people's desks, like in its cage and stuff, but it would be there. And so you'd be on the phone and you'd hear this chirp, 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 and I'd be like, I'm not outside, I promise.
Wow.
It was the weirdest thing. And
That is so
and
wild.
she'd be in her office doing her nails, getting like all this stuff. And she wanted so desperately to be friends with all of us.
Yeah.
And most of us just didn't really like her that much, to be honest,
Yeah.
or had problems with her and everything. But unlike Michael, I didn't see her grow when I worked with her for a few years. But Michael, I think, Michael at his heart is like a little kid that is so lonely. And like, in the episode Take Your Daughter to Work Day, that one when everybody's taking their daughter to work, and he shows that episode of television that he was on as a kid, and he's wearing a suit, and his biggest wish is to have everybody kind of like him and be his friend and all his dreams. And the kids are like, so did you get that? And he's like, no. And he realizes none of his dreams he had came true. And looking at the heartbreak on his face and the realization that something that he thought was so cool and he was going to share with these kids ended up making him realize how much he felt he had lost in life and that he didn't achieve. And another way you see that too is all his different relationships on this show. And that's why I love that he found Holly, because Holly is just like him in a lot of respects. And they match so well together, and she loves some of his dorkiness and really loves it and finds it endearing. And you see, though, that like his other relationships weren't like that. Like he was just so desperate for love that he would have a relationship with anyone and he would fall fast, hard and fast. And you see that in the episode where he thinks he's got herpes, when he's got the ingrown hair on his mouth. And so he goes and he goes
Right.
with Dwight and goes to visit all his old lovers and tell them all that they might have herpes. And he goes on this journey, and all these women, he's realizing, what did I see in these people? Why did I want to be with them? And realizing, they're all like, you took us too seriously. You moved on. You moved too fast.
Mm-hmm.
And then he realizes with Holly, it wasn't like that, and how that was a genuine relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So you watch him grow throughout, and he still, though, has those moments like how he wants to propose to Holly and basically is going to set the whole place on fire if he does the proposal he wants to do. But you see him evolve into this very caring and loving person who genuinely loves the people he works with, whether or not they love him, because I don't think Stanley ever liked him. Same with Oscar. I don't think Oscar was ever genuinely a Michael fan. But you watch how a lot of them grow to appreciate him when they realize how much he truly does care about the office. And you realize that, in season 3, when Jim is no longer working there and he's working at the other branch until the branches merge and stuff. And the branch that he was working at, which was the one that was going to be surviving, and they were going to close down Scranton, and they didn't end up doing it. Well, his manager at his other one was, leveraging that position in order to get a position at a different company. And in the talking head bit where they're talking to Jim about that, and Jim says, say what you will about Michael Scott, but Michael Scott would never do that. And that, I think, is what it makes Michael Scott, even though he says horrible things, he does horrible things, he can be very self-absorbed. Like in the episode that was celebrating his birthday, and Kevin was waiting to hear if he had cancer, and he was so upset that they were making everything about Kevin. At his heart, he is someone who just really loves, like purely loves people and wants them to love himself. And he's so desperate for that love that it can come off as very grating and too insistent and too pushy, and selfish. He can come off as very self-absorbed, putting himself first. But I think he's a fantastic character, a great character. And even though he can frustrate you and he does horrible things, he still, at his heart, means well. He genuinely cares. And I loved his relationship with Holly. I keep going back to that because he also changed and grew. Like when Holly meets Todd Packer, who was such a horrible, disgusting person.
Yeah.
And Michael idolized him.
Yeah.
And Holly's like, he is a he's not even funny. And then when he finally realizes that, and it's such a great scene when he realizes that, and when he realizes, I am better than this person that I idolized. Why did I idolize this person? So it's such an interesting character arc. And I think a big reason the show goes downhill is because he was kind of the heart of the show. I think people like to say that Jim and Pam are the heart of the show, but no, I think Michael was the genuine heart of the show. And when he left, the show kind of floundered and didn't know how to find and fill in that missing piece. So
yeah, I agree. They should have just probably ended it. And I think like you, I think I have seen all of it at this point, but I didn't watch those later seasons until the rewatch, probably for our podcast 5 years ago episode about it. But yeah, he is really compelling, that character, and the acting and his dynamic with Jim, with Ryan, with Rainn Wilson is so funny. The Dwight and Michael, I mean, without Dwight, without some of these other people to play off of it, and then it just wouldn't come off that way. And then I really loved how he is just, as you said, I think he's just so desperate to be a part of something. He's willing to overlook people's issues. And then he finally sees that and realizes, I'm also worthy of being part, like deciding what I actually want or my own value. And I think that's a journey we all go through because we're all kind of put into different situations where we're part of something and some of us don't really want to be part of that. And then when we have the agency or the choice, we make different choices. But it takes a lot. That's very feminine in a way to me, like that idea that you have to feel good enough and solid enough in yourself to be able to let go of relationships that are not serving you. And I see that happening with that character's development. I don't mean to make it all, serious.
Well, no, it's true though. It's very true. I mean, that's what happened. The Michael Scott in season 2 would have really ruined. He wouldn't have been able to have that relationship with Holly.
Mm-hmm.
That Michael Scott, that wouldn't have happened in the same way. And the fact that he chooses to leave because he loves her so much and he knows how important it is to her to be there for her family when she's going to be losing her father. And so he knows that's important and he loves her more than himself. I think that's what ends up happening with Michael is he ends up finding someone that he loves more than himself, because even though I think he's got some self-hatred, he also kind of thinks of himself as higher than he really is or more important than he really is. And I think he gets some grounding later on. And, I do love that he comes back. And I will say, even though I have a problem with season 8 and season 9, I love the series finale of this show. I think it's one of the best series finales. I was watching it today and I cried. I cry every time I watch it. I think it's just perfect in every way. I'll mention that a little bit in our last segment, just one line. That's how I'm going to end the whole thing is before we go to the Finn segment. But yeah, I think he's just such an iconic character and no one else could have played this but Steve Carell. Steve Carell does such a great job. Steve Carell is so good at adding humanity to characters that it might be hard to see the humanity in at first. He does that so well. We talked a little bit about that when we talked about 40-Year-Old Virgin last week, is, that character too could have been very much a caricature and someone you just laughed at and you didn't see a deeper meaning in. But Steve Carell added so much to that character, and he does that with Michael, and he had a longer time to really do that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just incredible what he does in this performance, because yes, he's hilarious, but he has so many moments of pure heart and pure joy, and where you see him like tear up, and it's genuine emotion, and comedy is the hardest thing to do, and he is so good at it.
Yeah.
Which is why he's good in the dramas too.
Yeah, it's it's funny. I also want to shout out for the editing on that show.
Yeah.
And thinking about it, just like how much work. Yes, all the props to him. And I'll say 2 seconds about that, which I probably said on the last one. But the editing of that really makes it like the storytelling is so tight and concise, and like you'll jump from this scene to this scene, and that's really funny because I don't know that shows really did that prior to this particular sitcom. Like you couldn't necessarily expect that as a technique. And I think that as a storytelling technique, or I don't remember seeing it. Maybe I just am not being comprehensive, but I think that was a big deal for this one too. But I remember seeing Carell back on The Daily Show when it was hosted by, oh my gosh.
I know, what was his name?
Jon Stewart. I was like,
yeah,
wow.
but was he on there when it was the original guy before Jon Stewart?
It was. I don't remember if he was, but it was Steve Carell, and Stephen Colbert was on there too.
Yeah.
Steve Carell had a segment, and this is the part that does not age well too. Is anything about size or bodies? I don't think that is appropriate. But he had a segment called Slimmin' Down with Steve, and he sang the intro, and it was Slimmin' Down with Steve, Slimmin' Down with Steve, right? And it was making fun of diet culture, because it was the height of kind of, I think, Atkins, or almost like now keto, I think would be the thing, where he goes to the store and he's like, what do you mean I can't eat a stick of butter? And he like just takes a bite out of a stick of butter. I just remember this. I don't know what happened to it, but it was a segment that was ongoing, and it was just the non sequitur, like the obnoxious, like fake reporting, fake news, like real fake news thing. And I remember watching that and going, that guy's going to be a big deal. He was so funny and so good. You couldn't not watch that. And I just thought that's a performer. That is someone who you are going to see. And then sure enough, pretty soon after that, he went into the Office, I think it was, and 40-Year-Old Virgin and whatnot. But even from back in that, I thought that. And then I think Stephen Colbert and Steve Carell used to do debates. Do you remember this? Even Stevens. And it would just,
I used to watch it too.
It would just be like, no, yes, no,
okay,
yes,
and
they would just do that to each other. Anyway, it was good stuff. I liked it.
Yeah. He's a fantastic actor. I haven't watched the new stuff that he's doing this Netflix show, 4 seasons.
Yeah.
With Coleman Domingo is the big reason I want to watch it. And Tina Fey is on there too. I'm very whatever on her. But I do want to watch that, and I guess that's supposed to be really good. But yeah, he's one of my favorite comedic actors who also does the drama so well.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, this show I don't think would have lasted as long without him. And I do think it also, has to do with the other characters. I don't want to slight them, because I do think they are important. I do think Dwight is essential to this show, and what Rainn Wilson does with that character, and the fact that character never apologizes for who they are.
Yes.
Even when they're awful, they never apologize for who they are. And I really appreciate that about that character, honestly, because Dwight grows some. Dwight does have some growth. I mean, he becomes closer to Jim at the very end, and he says that Pam's his best friend in the series finale. And he does grow a little bit, but he's still always Dwight. And I think if you're looking at that compared to Michael, it's interesting because Michael grows and Dwight kind of stays. But in a lot of respects, it makes sense because I think Dwight was already so confident in who he was. even though he was obsessed with having Michael's approval, he still was confident in himself, that he was confident enough to be like, you know, in the episode where he basically is like saying, I can do a better job running this branch than Michael, and meets with Jan behind Michael's back. You know, he still was confident enough to do that. But so I don't want to put the other characters, I'm not saying they aren't essential, because I think they are. And I love a lot of them. And a lot of them have some of the best lines and best scenes in the show. I just think Michael was such the heart of the show that when you took that heart part out, it was hard for everything else to kind of function in the same way. Even the characters you loved, it just felt like there was such a piece missing. And that happens a lot on shows when you get rid of like a big part of the show and they leave. And I mean, granted, I've heard that didn't happen when George Clooney left ER, but I stopped watching ER pretty close after George Clooney left. Because, you know, that was one of my huge crushes for years and years and years. I you know, George Clooney, you can go back and listen to our George Clooney episode, but Doug Ross was a big reason for that. But yeah, so sorry, I got on a tangent there about Doug Ross and ER, which we will cover that show someday on this podcast as well. Yeah.
You should definitely talk about The Pit. Those are two shows that are not my forte because they're probably too graphic, but I've heard The Pit. I've heard good things about it.
See, I know so many people that love that show. I watched the first episode and I haven't continued it. It's not an insult to the show necessarily. I just, I don't know. I loved ER. I did stop watching it though. And I like medical dramas. Okay. They're not always my cup of tea, but you know, and I like Noah Wyle. He wasn't like my favorite. Like I liked Carter, but he wasn't like one of my favorites. Although I did see him on the Warner Brothers lot when ER was so huge and went and did a tour, and he was riding his bicycle around the lot. And I remember going, hi, and he waved to all of us doing our little studio tour. Everyone was geeking out.
Yeah.
Also geeking out because we got to see the Friends set, and you know, we got to see, at the time I loved this show, Dean Cain is not a good person, but we saw the set for Lois and Clark. That was around the time that show was on. So geeking out about stuff like that. Anyway, has nothing to do with this.
Yeah. That's okay. It's related somehow.
Somehow. But we're going to take another quick break. And when we come back, I want to just end as far as the office talk. Then we'll go to the Finn, 6 Degrees of Finn. I just want to know what your favorite season was or 3 of your favorite episodes. So we'll be right back.
Summer's here, and Nordstrom has everything you need for your best dress season ever. From beach days and weddings to weekend getaways and your everyday wardrobe. Discover stylish options under $100 from tons of your favorite brands like Mango, Skims, Princess Polly, and Madewell. It's easy, too, with free shipping and free returns, in-store order pickup, and more. Shop today in stores, online at Nordstrom.com, or download the Nordstrom app.
Eczema isn't always obvious, but it's real. And so is the relief from Ebglyss. After an initial dosing phase of 16 weeks, about 4 in 10 people taking Ebglyss achieved itch relief and clear or almost clear skin. And most of those people maintain skin that's still more clear at 1 year with monthly dosing.
Ebglyss, lebrikizumab LBKZ, a 250 milligram per 2 milliliter injection, is a prescription medicine used to treat adults and children 12 years of age and older who weigh at least 88 pounds or 40 kilograms with moderate to severe eczema, also called atopic dermatitis, that is not well controlled with prescription therapies used on the skin or topicals, or who cannot use topical therapies. Ebglyss can be used with or without topical corticosteroids. Don't use if you're allergic to Ebglyss. Allergic reactions can occur that can be severe. Eye problems can occur. Tell your doctor if you have new or worsening eye problems. You should not receive a live vaccine when treated with Ebglyss. Before starting Ebglyss, tell your doctor if you have a parasitic infection.
Searching for real relief? Ask your doctor about Ebglyss and visit ebglyss.lilly.com or call 1-800-LILY-RX or 1-800-545-5979.
Okay, so the dreaded question that everybody dreads. The favorites question. I know everybody hates this question because I limit people, but if I don't limit people, we will be here for 20 hours. So
Yeah. No, this is tough. I didn't have time to rewatch the whole thing, but I am very partial to season 2. I've been really enjoying that. But if I have to pick 3 episodes, it's going to be the injury, the dinner party, and I think the fun run one.
Oh, yeah.
I think that one, where they're
For rabies awareness.
rabies. Yeah. Yep. Because for years, one of the first nerdy pop culture items I had, and I couldn't find it or I would have worn it. I think I have it somewhere, is a shirt, a gray t-shirt that says Shoot Farm Beats. But it's the shirt, it's like a replica of what Dwight spray painted, right, for the fun run. And I used to wear that, and I've gotten, out of everything I own, maybe the Steed Bonnet cosplay has gotten that many compliments, but that is the most complimented thing I think I've ever worn. Yeah.
Aw.
And I'm like, I am not a person who looks good in gray. It's just, I need the dark colors, I need the bright colors, and that's fine. So it's not about me. It's about that everybody loves that show and they love that shirt. And people would just be like, oh my God, I love your t-shirt. And then want to talk about The Office and like back and forth. And so it was just so funny to see that response. I bought it years ago. I just thought it was such a clever episode. And I found it, one of my first, like, oh, I found this on Etsy or internet or whatever, purchase, eBay, something, whatever, back in the day. And that was just such a classic. So I love that one. That's such a funny episode. Dinner Party, I gotta say, just because we quote it all the time. And like the bit about where he's talking about, I got the vasectomy. Then you had it reversed. Snip, snap, snip, snap. Babe, snip, snap, snip, snap. And he's just, I can't even imagine how they kept it together and how they got through that 20-inch plasma screen TV, babe. Serenity by Jan. It's a perfect episode. I don't even know if you have never seen there's just those episodes of TV where you're like, okay, if I had to have like a best episodes. And I just love the entry because that made me laugh so hard when at the very end, Dwight finally goes to the hospital because he has a concussion and Michael's trying to put his foot. A few years ago, I got to, very briefly meet Rainn Wilson because he came to Fan X down in Salt Lake. Yeah, that's what it was. And I went because Xena and Gabrielle were there, the actors, Renee O'Connor and Lucy Lawless, and Rainn Wilson was there. So I got a picture and it's like me with the Schrute Farms Beach shirt over my Xena costume. It looks awful. But I really, really wanted to somehow cosplay Michael with the bubble wrapped foot. And I just couldn't, and the crutch, and he tries to open the door with the crutch. Jesus, it is the dumbest, funniest humor. Anyway, I wanted to do that and I couldn't do it. But I guess that's what I'll say without like rewatching everything. But I did read back through the titles because I think just reading the titles, I could remember what happened on most of these. And I don't know if I love season 3 where they have Jim in the other office and then Andy. That is a very annoying, but I think that's the point of that character.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah. I mean, when I say I don't like him, it's not that I think he's pointless like Robert California. I think is just, there's no point to him in my opinion. Although there's a really interesting, if you go to our Discord channel, and you can always find that in the link in the show notes, in the TV channel, because if it's a TV thing, Carla posted a link to a video that's a theory about who Jan's therapist was. And it's really interesting. But, the
funny.
therapist she mentions all the time. But the other part that I love about the injury, and then I'll mention mine because I think those are all great. I won't say much about Dinner Party because that's actually my number one all-time favorite episode of the show, honestly. And I think it's one of the best episodes of TV, period. But what I love in that episode too is when Dwight gets the concussion and he's so not Dwight.
Yeah.
And when he ends up becoming really close to Pam and their brief friendship. And then when they're having the meeting with the manager of the building, and Dwight's just got his hand up and he doesn't even realize he has
This poor guy. Yeah.
I love that one so much. I think it's so funny. And I think a lot of the Christmas episodes, I'll just say, I'll use that as I'll just say in general, the Christmas episodes on this show are so, so good. The moment I'm going to signal out is, and it's in season 4, the Christmas episode Sorry, I just wanted to make sure I got it right. No, they didn't have a Christmas episode in season 4. Must have been season 5. Sorry. When they have the Moroccan Christmas, and when when Michael is trying to get Meredith to go into rehab, and they're sitting around, and he's like doing an intervention. He's trying to do an intervention, and he's reading something, and he's like, "Did your drinking ever make you question your beliefs in the Mormon faith or something like that?" It's so hilarious.
He just got a quiz somewhere. Yeah.
I love that so much when he's reading that, because it's like everything else goes along, and then he says that, and it's so hilarious.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, so I love all of those. I love the Dundies, which is the season 2 premiere. And I think that's the episode that kind of kicks off how great the rest of, well, not the rest, but a majority of the show is. And I just say, and I love watching Pam get drunk. It's a different side of Pam. Just watching Michael host the Dundies in Chili's, and Chili's was such a big thing with this show.
Yeah. It's like they had product placement, but it weirded me out to see the Chili's spelled out and not just the pepper. You remember that? Like, do you remember that trend where stuff used to actually have letters you had to read? And then like they made a shift of, we're not going to make people read anymore. We're just going to put the picture of what we have and they'll know. And I remembered that shift about 10, 15 years ago and thinking, that's so stupid. That's so, infantile. And now I can't remember before.
And then in that episode when they take the client out to Chili's, and they're saying, "I want my baby back, baby back, baby back."
Bloomin' onion? Yeah. So the bloomin', do they do that? I don't remember if it's there with the big tower of onion rings.
Yeah, it is. They have something like that at Outback. I think they have something like that too. But I think they mentioned it in the client episode too. But yeah, there's so many great ones. But those are the 3. I'll just say singularly Christmas, Dinner Party I second, because that's just one of the best episodes of television ever. And then the Dundies, just because I think it signals such a change in a lot of the show going forward.
Michael ruined the lyrics of many classic songs, so I'll never be able to. Jim's outros are great. Or like, oh, God. Yeah, that one was pretty good. And Pam falling off the chair and
getting banned from Chili's.
Woo. She's not allowed back here.
I love that. Because of all the people to get banned from Chili's in that group, it's just so funny that it would be Pam. And I love my favorite of the Michael songs in that episode is probably his version of Tiny Dancer.
Yeah,
you have won a Tiny Dundee.
Yeah. I think from everyone, and the part that is funny, like he does some awful stuff in that show. Like he has a horrible,
and in that episode,
right? In that episode, like at breakfast, that's what I meant. Like he does a terrible breakfast activity. I don't even want to, but you know what I'm talking about if you're knowing, and it's awful. It's always been terrible. But the part that gets me is when Pam she's very drunk, but she's like, and give Michael a hand. It's hard. This is harder than it looks. Okay, if you have ever stood in front of anybody and run anything or taught a class, you know that is true. And so I actually, on the rewatch, go, yes, it really is harder than it looks to pull off. And it's not always successful, but you just keep going. You just keep doing it. But yes, I think that was a moment too, where you start to realize, okay, this guy is obnoxious, but he's trying really hard. Like he cares enough to put in the effort here to put himself, on stage. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Very true. Mm-hmm. Well, before we turn to 6 Degrees of Finwit Rock, which this is another one that is super, super, super easy.
I might even know this. Yeah. Sorry. I might even know this.
Easy ways. So that means you didn't play.
I did not look. No, I was like, I have no time, as you know, this week. So
I understand. I don't have very much time either. But
I did the research of watching the show a little bit, and that's what the effort that I put in. You know what they don't teach you in business school, Erin? is 10 things about business, and I'll tell you the rest tomorrow. No, do you remember this episode where he's
Yes,
really...
I do.
Anyway,
Yes.
is 6 Degrees of Finn Whitrock. They don't business.
Even though I want to say I give all of my panelists an opportunity to cheat by using the Oracle of Bacon.
Yep.
So just like,
Yeah.
but I understand my
Erin
brain doesn't work either.
did
But
full due diligence. I was lazy, is what happened.
but I do want to see if you know the quick way, because that's not what I used. But we'll get to that in a second. But I did want to just end. I think in the series finale, Pam has a great line in there where she says, "There's a lot of beauty in ordinary things, and isn't that kind of the point?" And I think that sums up what The Office really is about and why it spoke to so many people. So I just wanted to end on that line because I love that line.
Mm-hmm.
And that's usually where I start crying.
That's good. I got goosebumps. I got to say, like, it really is, because this is your life, right? And this, I think for all of his flaws, that's what Michael gets is, I want to have this dialed up to 11. But then, I'm sorry, I'm just thinking of the scene where he has to fire. I just watched the one where he has to fire someone and he has Jim role play and he's like, he's just over dramatically reacts. Anyway, yeah. Okay.
Okay, well, we are going to play 6 Degrees of Finn Whitrock, or I'm going to play 6 Degrees of Finn Whitrock, although I am first going to ask, do you know what the really easy?
Was he in The Office?
No.
Oh, damn. Okay.
Not that I know of.
Then I don't know.
Okay. I will reveal what one of the easiest ways, like the 1 degree way.
One of the people there was a Glee person in The Office, and Glee, the guy from Glee was a Ryan Murphy production. And I know Mr. Finn has been in Ryan Murphy shows. There you go. I did it.
There you go.
With my own brain, kind of.
You did it. And also, if you were to go the Ryan Murphy route, also Evan Peters played Michael's nephew.
Okay.
Who he ends up spanking in that episode. That was Evan Peters, and Evan Peters has been in so many Ryan Murphy things, and he's been in some of the American Horror Story seasons that Finn was in as well. So that's another way you could do it. But I'll reveal the other one that I was thinking of that was also one that I mentioned could be used for 40-Year-Old Virgin. Tiff and I did not use the easy way on that one, but I mentioned that it could be, and I'll reveal that in a second. So I used Jenna Fisher, who was in, this is actually a quick one, but Jenna Fisher was in Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story, which if you haven't watched that movie, I think that movie's hilarious. And also in that movie was Paul Rudd. And Paul Rudd was in A Futile and Stupid Gesture with Mr. Finn Whitrock. Okay, so the Steve Carell way. Steve Carell was in The Big Short with Finn Whitrock.
Yeah, that's
who else is in The Big Short?
Christian Bale.
Yes.
I knew something.
Which I don't know if you've seen The Big Short, Tanya. But
I think I have. Yeah, a couple
okay,
times.
because I'm like, that's totally, I think, something that we already did our Big Short episode, but I just would be interested.
That's right up my alley. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you can go and listen to us talk about The Big Short. And also on that episode, quote unquote, Christian, Carla's Christian Bale impression, makes an appearance and does what personally is, I think, my favorite Christian Bale thing we've ever had on here, quote unquote, Christian Bale, not the real Christian, gives us all economic advice. And it is absolutely hilarious.
Drive a 20-year-old truck. And
no, it's so funny.
Dig Ron Swanson, put your gold in the ground. Gold in the ground. Yeah. No, that's funny. I like that.
Yeah, he talks about everything he learned while making The Big Short.
That's
and
good.
It's the quote unquote.
Just like
it's Carla's Christian.
It's really good. Yeah, don't sue us, Christian Bale.
No, I think Christian would get a kick out of it, hopefully.
It's pretty funny.
That's my number one dream interview, is interviewing Christian Bale. That's the one interview. I've gotten nervous for interviews before, but since I've interviewed so many different people, I kind of like my nervousness around celebrities has kind of gone away. Like when I went to the last Supernatural convention, I was amazed. I was like, oh, I wasn't even nervous around Jensen, and that shocked the hell out of me.
Yeah.
And I had like 4 interactions with him.
Nice.
And so because I was so laid back, I want to say this is the key with him, because he's kind of a more shy and reserved person, I think. Not necessarily shy, but he's just a more reserved person. And the key with him is if you're very relaxed, he will be like totally like, hey, it was like a totally like easygoing interactions with him every time because my nervousness was totally gone.
Yeah.
So
you're like a human Quaalude. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know. or I don't know what the people do these days. That's a very old drug that you can't get. You're like a human CBD gummy. You just calm them down. Yeah. No, that's cool.
Well, no, it is amazing how doing interviews, because I'm very blessed that I've been able to interview people that, I've been nervous. Like I was nervous when I interviewed Omar Epps, but that went away really quickly. I was nervous when I interviewed Devin Sawa. That went away really quickly. Lots of people that I've been nervous about. When I interviewed Dee Wallace Stone, but Dee Wallace, when I interviewed her, I was super nervous, but that went away in about 2 seconds flat because it's a very different kind of interaction when you're interviewing people, because you're thought of as being on the same level. So it's like, it doesn't feel like a fan interaction.
Yeah, totally. And you don't have, like, for me, I'm not that. I'm just that's my secret cap. I'm always anxious, but like to paraphrase, but I think the crowd for me, like, I'm so empathic that I pick up on what's happening. So I think at like a convention, I'm not personally nervous, but I will get nervous from the people who are nervous, or
that makes sense.
I will pick up whatever feeling is happening. So I think for an interview, first of all, you do your homework and you're really good at it and skillful. And that's something that I don't think people encounter. No. And that's nice if you are on the interviewee side, right? To like get to talk about it, and you have to do this, but it's your job. And so I think if you're viewed as a professional, that's got to be really different and easier to snap into that role. Like if you're doing something you know how to do and you like to do and you're good at. Same thing for me. Like if you put me in front of a room full of people, I will make them listen to me. No, I mean that was meant to be a joke.
I know.
And it didn't.
No.
Punchline didn't end, but I was like, you will listen. I will tell you something.
No, but I think
it would
there
be
is
a joke, or it would be
truth.
Sociology.
I think there's truth to what you're saying, though. Yeah. Like you're able to like get that attention, because it is true. Like I have a hard time thinking that I do anything well, but the one thing I will compliment myself on are my interview skills, because I do take it seriously. To me, I'm like, I know for some of these people, they do so many interviews and they get asked the same questions over and over again. And I'm not saying every question I ask is unique or different, but I try to make the interview as enjoyable for them as it is for me to do. And I have been very fortunate and blessed that I have interviewed some fantastic people. There's only been a couple people that and I'm not going to say who, that I've interviewed that haven't been as enjoyable. Mm. But for the most part, they've been enjoyable. And I just love talking about art with artists. And I think the reason I am, stronger in my belief of my ability is I've had so many people that don't know me. And so they have nothing to gain from it, telling me how much they loved the interview. I'll never forget interviewing this author of this book called Sins of the Father, which if anybody wants to know why what's happening right now is so similar to what happened with Nazis, go read that book, because it talks about how Hitler really started and a lot of the stuff that we don't talk about, and how it was a slow thing and it wasn't just quick like I think people talk about. And in that interview, me and the author, Herb Stern, we talked about how, he said it starts with country clubs not allowing certain people. That's where it starts, and it starts small and grows and grows and grows. And anyway, the publicist emailed me after they talked to him after the interview, and the publicist said, I just thought you'd want to know, he's been in this industry for like 40 years and you were the best interview he's ever had.
Wow.
Ever. And so, and I'm not trying to just be like, oh, I'm the best, but it's just when I'm feeling like I don't know what I'm doing, it's remembering that kind of stuff. I have like clips that I keep on hand that I won't ever reveal of stuff that people when I've interviewed have talked to me afterwards.
Good.
And have made me feel like, oh, wow, I'm actually really good at this. And I haven't done as many interviews this year. I did some in the beginning, but I've been so swamped that I haven't gotten to any. But I'm hoping to get some more on just because I enjoy doing it. And, I've had some fun interactions. And so
you should absolutely.
Anyway,
that's great. Like we as teachers, we get thank yous and we get little notes about how we have no idea. Like a lot of times that's the thing that's tough. Like for me, from my perspective is like, I feel like sometimes I know, right, when it's skillful or when it's effective. And sometimes I have no idea until I'm told and I get that feedback. And I have a little place where I put stuff because it's just nice. Those days when you don't know, you need to like go have that validation. So the imposter syndrome is real and it doesn't matter how long you've been doing it. So I absolutely validate you collecting those and holding on to them so that you can trust those folks' word for it when you feel that doubt coming in.
Yeah, because it happens a lot. Like, like I remember when I interviewed Devin Sawa, I was talking to him about this independent movie he did. And I was so excited to be able to interview him because I'm like, a lot of like my friends are like, he's, Final Destination and Idle Hands and Casper and all these things. And so for some people and millennials, especially, I think he was kind of like huge for them and a little bit for my generation, for Gen X, but a lot for millennials. And so I was really nervous to interview him, but he comes on and because of the subject matter of the movie, he was like, oh, you're the first female journalist I've talked to about. So I'm like, journalist? And I didn't say that, but in my head, I'm like, I can't believe someone just called me a journalist because I don't consider myself that.
Yeah.
And so to be called that was such an interesting experience. And he was also like, I'm so excited to talk to a woman about this movie because of some of the subject matter and how it might have hit you. And so that was an interesting thing, but that immediately put me at ease. So all of the nervousness went away that I might have had talking to him. But yeah, it's an interesting thing. And some people have been like, it like a lot of actors and other creators are incredibly shy. And so some of them don't talk very long and you have like, so you can ask more questions and then other people talk forever and answer the question forever. And you're like, okay, I got to scratch that question. Because a lot of times you have like a time limit, So I'm going to stop now.
Yeah, no, we're
going to end this
episode.
Good. So thank you, Tanya, for joining me and let me go on that little tangent there. All that to say, someday I will interview Christian Bale, and that will happen someday, hopefully.
That's what she said. I was like, I gotta put it in here somewhere, and it's not a very.
I know we didn't really say that much, which is kind of weird.
But you said something about you want people to enjoy themselves, and you want to enjoy yourself, and I almost said that's what she said, but it was like a really good point. I didn't want to say it then, so I'm saying it now.
But thank you, Tanya, for joining me. And if you want to let everybody know where they can find you. And also you can listen to an interview I did with Tanya too, by the way.
Oh, that's right. Yes. So I have been on that side. Yeah. And I was remembering that. That was fun. That was one of my most fun ones. Where can you find me? Probably sequestered grading, but no, you can find me I'm on Blue Sky. I think I'm just Tanya Cook and whatever all the Blue Sky letters and stuff. Or on, which I forget that I have, and then once in a while I like put a dumb joke or something on Blue Sky or memes. I'm the Michael Scott. He forwards inappropriate emails, and I don't do that, but I definitely send my friends memes that are not inappropriate, but I think they're funny. But my friends are probably rolling their eyes, going, it's basically when Michael gets the phone number of Ryan and just is like,
oh yeah,
this is Mike Tyson, right? Or, hey Ryan, it's your girlfriend and I'm mad. Okay. So, but I digress. Tanya-cook.com. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
That's a thing. Yes.
Well, thank you. And this is not really Fergie's kind of show. The only comedy she likes is Abbott Elementary, but mainly she likes horror. But you can follow her on TikTok at Schroeder and Fergs. That's SCHROEDERANDFERGS. It's long, but it's worth it. To find all our past episodes, including the Office one that we did back in 2020, in April of 2020. And you can find interviews. We have a special page just for interviews. You can find links to our Redbubble store, all sorts of stuff, and all of our socials on our website. It's a fandomthingpod.com. And while you're there, you can also, on the Support Us tab, become a Patreon supporter today. For as little as $3 a month, you get bonus content. You get ad-free episodes. You get episodes a day early. And you can win prizes sometimes, like some of our Patreon supporters won some prizes during our marathon streaming event that, I'm forecasting this in the future, that went off without a hitch.
It was perfect.
Hopefully, fingers crossed.
My favorite segment was about the pink-haired chick who covered for your meal break.
Tanya's Marxist Corner.
Yes. I don't even know. I'm just going to talk about Karl Marx and things that remind me of that.
It'll be.
So, good luck to both of us.
But every once in a while, I do give away prizes to my Patreon supporters. At higher levels, you automatically get merch at a certain point in time, and it just gets sent to you by the Patreon people. I don't know. They just let me notice. They gave me a notice saying, oh, someone's getting merch soon. But anyway, so become a Patreon supporter today by clicking the link in the show notes or the Support Us tab on our website. And next week, we are wrapping up the official comedy month, although we are going to discuss The Bear at the end. But The Bear, once again, is not a comedy. I just thought it'd be funny to put it during this month. But we are going to be talking about a show that is turning like 30. I think it's like 30 years, so it's even older than The Office. And that's News Radio. And Carla is going to be joining me for that one. And this is a show that I thought I had never watched. I am rewatching it and I'm like, I've watched this show. So somehow I blocked it. I'd also blocked the fact that, sadly, Joe Rogan is on this show. And I'm like, you're part of the reason our country is so horrible now. Anyway, but it should still be a fun conversation. So that will be next time. So until next time, remember, it's a fandom thing. Black Lives Matter, stop Asian hate, and free Palestine.